Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from where you're watching. So in this video, we are going to deploy our identity manager with a load balancer. Basically, my end goal is to have my VRA deployed on a high availability mode. And the first step is to make sure we have our identity manager deployed in the high availability mode. So to do so, basically you can have multiple methods. At this point of time, while making the video, I can think of two easiest method, and basically this is a greenfield approach, not a brownfield approach. Um, what you can do as a method one is to deploy your lifecycle manager only during your VRA deployment, and just deploy your lifecycle manager, and later on you can deploy your identity manager with the load balancer. Hence later on you can also deploy your VRA with the load balancer. So this is just with respect to identity manager, so I'm just going to talk about your identity manager only. The second method could be your deploy your lifecycle manager with a single identity manager, and later on you can scale it to the clustered mode. Basically, you need either one node for a normal VRA deployment, or I'm sorry, for identity deployment, or minimum of three to make sure it is highly available. Now, when you choose method two, you just deploy your identity manager with one single node. And once you go to your lifecycle manager, you will get an option. I'll try to show this method too. But what happens is once you go to your lifecycle manager, you have an option to scale to three nodes. What we are trying to do in this video is the method one. We will just deploy our lifecycle manager, and then we will use our identity manager with the load balancer. Now we have a lifecycle manager which I'm going to deploy now, and then later on I'll deploy all of my three nodes of my identity manager from lifecycle manager. And I have my load balancer also ready. I'll make sure that my load balancer web is also ready, all the DNS entries are done, and using that my lifecycle manager is going to push the other basically three nodes, and the load balancer is using the communication to all the other nodes. Without wasting much time, let's jump into the lab time. So guys, here I am on my vCenter. Let me close this. I have turned off my server which are hosted on this. So I already have a existing setup for my VRA, load balancer, NSX and everything, but I'm not going to touch at this point of time all these things. We are going to deploy a fresh new lifecycle manager. So without wasting much time, I have mounted my ISO. Click on Windows 32. This is the installer. Make sure that you have all the DNS entry done. I have just make sure all my DNS entries are in place. My vCenter information. Okay, why did not it's not connected? Okay, I know what could be the reason, because of my keyboard language setting. Let me click next, accept the certificate warning. It's connected. I'm gonna do on VRA on my prod 1 cluster, and let me see which has, I think this has enough disk space to handle this request. Make sure, in my case I make sure that I have a thin. Select the network, provide the what will be the IP assignment, which is pretty much static. default gateway, DNS server, domain what you have, and your NTP server. Provide the password. And this is the information for my lifecycle manager to be deployed. This is my temporary, my IP address, host name, default data center what you have, default data center. You can put anything name or you can define everything later. Let it be like this. I'm gonna skip my identity manager deployment, which automatically skips my realize automation deployment also. Now click on next and simply submit. So guys, I will be pausing this video or fast forwarding this video, and we will directly jump into when my lifecycle manager is deployed, and we can see it's in progress. It takes some while, like another like 10, 15, 20 minutes depending upon the performance of your infrastructure and the resources what you have. So so lifecycle manager is up. Let's connect to the lifecycle manager. So guys, all these section I have covered in my other videos if you just want to know. But in this case, I'm just gonna click my lifecycle manager operations and start creating the environment. So before we create an environment, it is gonna ask us some basic information. That is create data center because we don't have one. Let me give a data center name that is called my core DC. Location is Dubai. I don't want to give that. Oh, what did I write? I'm so sorry. It's called Cure. Delete data center. It's called Core DC. It is in Dubai. Okay. Now let me add my vCenter also. Okay. vCenter name, it is my core VC. Now dc hyphen vc hyphen 01.mar.com. So I need to add a credential for this VC to work. What I'm gonna do is, you can see this a key icon on the bottom, so that is where you can add your passwords. vCenter. Okay. I don't want to give any password description. Okay, this is my username. I've added it. Now select the credential. This is my vCenter password. Okay, let's validate this. Now click on save. So my basic data center setup is done, right? So you can see a small icon saying about my data center. Now you can see in the request, it is like in progress, right? Source mapping. So this is a workflow which is initiated to do that. So in the backend, it will get completed. What we can do meanwhile is to create our environment. So let me click on this first. Since you don't have any environment in your lifecycle manager, it's like pretty much empty. But the first step, what you get while you're creating an environment is just to deploy your identity manager. It is more like one-to-one mapping. So the time I click create environment, the first thing what it says is that install identity manager. And this is what we are going to do now. So let me give my email address. Let me add one password to it. I have selected the database. No, I am not going to use my JSON thing. And now you see only your identity manager as your product. So once you have your identity manager, you will see your visualize operations, you will see your visualize automation and other products with this identity manager. Now let me check this, and this deployment is a cluster deployment. Okay, and this is the latest version with 8.1. You can click on sizing information, view details. You will know that when you're deploying a standard, only one node. When you deploy cluster, it is 3 nodes. So 3 identity manager will be deployed. Now view details, it will redirect you to docs.vmware.com. Just you can refer everything from this place. Now let me click next. Read your EULA. Let me click on next. Certificate. The next part is to add the certificate. I have updated my certificate of marvel.com, that is start.marvel.com. But in your case, make sure you are doing an update. I'm skipping this part of my video and I'll be directly jumping into selecting my certificate. Now let me select my vCenter. Let me select my prod cluster, my folder, which is my VRA folder. Sorry, that was my wife. She is just saying that my breakfast is ready. And it's a thin disk mode. Let me click on next. Default gateway 192.168.0.1 255.255.255.0 will.com. Let me edit selection DNS. Okay, use the host NTP, or I can add an NTP server, that is pool AE. I'm gonna use AE dot pool dot ntp.org as my, okay, it's already there. So edit selection, it is already there. Finish, next. Now we are going to define all my configurations for deploying identity manager. So my certificate is selected. Enter the default configuration admin username, that is my cloud admin. Okay, now cluster with 192.168.0.45. Oh, I have to give FQDN. Let me get the FQDN from here. Okay, database IP 192.168.0.44. So this is the IP which the Postgres SQL is gonna use to do the load balancing. So basically it's not on the load balancer database load balancing IP used internally for proxying the Postgres master. This is not the same as one used on the load balancer application. Understood? Now all our component deployment. So the component deployment I have to provide one by one. That's the name of it. This .marvil.com. Just a second, guys. I'll back. Yeah. And then the IP address. 41, 42, and this is 43. Okay, this is 02, this is 03. So this is 02, this is 03. Okay, so all my necessary information is done, and just to show you, I have configured my load balancer. All the real servers are down because the servers appliances are not deployed. So once the appliances will be up, this will be also up. Now status is down because the overall servers are down. Now let me start the deployment of it. The next step what it does is it do its pre-check. Guys, you have to make sure there are few manual checks. Make sure your load balancer check for the cluster, refer the VMware Identity Manager document for the load balancer configurations, NTP, and the IP address check for the load balancer. Ensure you have a dedicated IP address free for available IP, and it is used internally as a database. Load balancer IP for proxying that we have already given, and 45. So let me also cross check if my 192.168.0.44 it's free. I'm not able to ping, right? And ping check for the cluster. Ensure to make sure that the VMware Identity Manager nodes are pingable, which is done. I have taken care of all these manual checks. Now let it do its own automated pre-checks. The first 15 checks has been passed. So input schema, input format, duplicate component property check, certificates, and all those things has been passed. Now it's doing the second round of pre-check. Infrastructure validation checks the credential for the given vCenter. Existing check for the cluster is given. Admin roles, firewall check, and accessibility. And this is the all last round. Okay, Identity Manager validation. So all these checks have been done. Let's click on next. Just review all the information that what you have provided is correct. Basically, let me check my cluster web. This is my cluster web IP. This is for my manager. That is for my database. And let me click on submit. Almost like 20 stages. So the entire step has to go to the 20 stages. So guys, I'm gonna pause my video and I'll be back when the entire stage is done. So guys, finally our Identity Manager deployment is done, And if we go back to our load balancer, okay, it's timed out. Let me log in again and show you. So my virtual IP server is 192.168.0.45 and it's accessible over 443. So that's my URL. Let me open it. Okay, so I'm accessing over my load balancer URL and I have given username as cloud admin. Since it's going to log in for the very first time, it's going to take some time. Let's go back and just have a look overview. So these are my end servers. I have select HTTPS pass-through mode for the configuration, and these are my protocols. So checkpoint, so the port which I check is 443. The URL is there on the standard VMware document, and I'm just doing HTTP method as a get, and the response I'm looking for is an OK, and these all are 443 at the end what I'm looking for. So yeah, this is my load balancer configuration. And so it has gone through like all together 20 stages to complete my identity manager setup. So if I go now to create environment, I will get all my other, let this environment be called VRA environment. I'm just showing you the options what we are getting. Now we are getting realize automation, login side, network inside, operations, vCloud, business. So we get all the other product or components which we can install, and this will be directly managed by Lifecycle Manager and integrated with our Identity Manager we just deployed. So let's go back. So this is the Identity Manager URL. We will go to the administration console. On my previous videos, I have shown all the configurations and everything of our identity manager. Appliance setting. And so you can see I am using now an external database since it's a clustered mode. You can see it is using the JDBC URL, username is Horizon, and the password is taken by default. These are the certificates what we have used. Identity Manager FQDN, so that's the FQDN we are using, which is the load balanced one. Time syslog. Pretty much this is what it contains. So you can see this is going to my Identity Manager 1. Now let's bring down our Identity Manager 1 and see how does it work. Simply power off. In case of failure, now we can go to the load balancer and click on home. As of now, it has not gone down. Now you can see the entire my LB is showing as of down because it's gonna take some time before it comes up. Now you can see after a while my LB is again up. It's showing my two of the nodes. So it takes some time to bring the nodes back. Now let's access this. I think it's going to take a little more time than expected. So you can see if I go to my lifecycle manager, I have identity manager 1, 2, 3, all the configurations done, and these are the connectors. So these are basically to integrate it. Now in the previous version you were having only one connectors, so that if the connector is down, your integration with that particular Active Directory was down. Now you have multiple connectors with the latest release. You can make sure that my nodes are up. Now you can see it is up, my manager. Let's go back to identity manager, and it still says as this, which is IDM 01, but in my case IDM 01 actually is down. You can see I've just brought down my IDM 01, but it still says as IDM 01. You can see we can still access all our nodes. And we can see from here system information and health utilization. So we have 41, 42 and 43. So we can see 41 is down, so that's why it's red marked, and 42 and 43. So PostgreSQL, this is specified, our clock, and we can see disk space utilization, application manager. Even I'm looking for the very first time, because this is the first time I'm doing this deployment. Just I'm having also look as in overall configurations. Rated component, port connectivity. Okay, so guys, this is on a very high level, that how we are deploying our identity manager on a clustered mode. And the next video which it will continue will be deploying my VRA on a clustered mode. Before we go ahead with that video, just make sure that your certificates are aligned. The certificate could be the biggest problem when you have while integrating your load balancer and your identity manager or a VRA. So make sure you are using a proper certificates. Plan it ahead. Maybe I can have a separate video session made just to explain what would be the right certificate if your organization does not allow a wildcard certificate. Since this is my lab, generally an organization might not allow you to use a wildcard certificate. Then what would be the right certificates to be used to make sure that your entire environment is intact and secure? So guys, thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like, subscribe and leave your comment. Also let me know what else video you want to see with respect to VRA and VRO. Thank you guys.